Oh, Pebbles.
Oh, my Pebbles. I don't need to open my Pebbles for a long time.
This carpet will stay.
Yes. You want to hold these Mikey Mike while we do a slappy slap?
That went into next video. That slap was so loud.
Yep.
Hello. This is J equals J, and you are welcome to the podcast. That's how we're introing
That's
now.
how we're okay, that's good. You know, I thought I would start this off. You know, I saw, I realized, came to the realization after 25 years of existence.
Yes.
Right. That you're gonna sit really high up this whole. There you go. Yeah, come down to my level. It's not hard. Actually, you know, I'm gonna shed some light on my face. I'm just gonna take my hat off there. I came to this realization, Joseph, that 90% of the aesthetic appeal of a Jeep comes from the tire on the back of it.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. So for whatever reason, I guess it was just that week in history, I saw two Jeeps without the tires on the back. And of course, when I say Jeep, I'm talking about the Jeep Wrangler, right?
Yes.
When I say Jeep, you think of
I actually had
Jeep.
a long discussion with a coworker about how Jeeps are only Jeeps if they're Jeep Wranglers.
That's very true. I agree with that. But I saw two Jeep Wranglers in the span of about 3 days that didn't have tires on the back.
Wild.
It was really sad.
It
was kind of like, okay, it's just a metal box. With wheels.
It's a metal death box.
Yes, it's a metal death box. It has lots of mechanical issues. I don't recommend buying one unless you work on cars personally, like unless that's kind of your thing. But it was just so sad. I was like, man, that's 90% of the appeal right there. My tire's on the back.
My tire, and it's not just the tire. Bless you.
Thank you.
There are two parts to a Jeep Wrangler. It's the tire and the tire cover. Every Jeep Wrangler has to have a unique tire cover or a branded one, or it's useless.
Oh, so it's even if it's no tire cover, it's off. Right?
If it's no tire cover, that is like its own kind of brand, but I feel like the tire cover is half the customization in a Jeep Wrangler is the color and the tire color. Cover.
Mostly
color
black.
And tire cover.
Yeah.
If it has a peace sign, you're one group. If it has which I forgot to close that door. That's fine. If it has a peace sign, it's one group. If it has the brand, then they're standard. It'll be fine.
Call my Mikey Mike.
Hi. I'm messing with the audio. And lastly, if it has the Elvish script of the ring on it, then they're a nerd.
Yeah, exactly. And it turns out, Joseph, that 90% of the disappointment of a show can come in the last 10% of a season.
I was wondering where you were going with this.
Transition. We're talking about rings of power today. Joseph, Mike, cheers.
Oh, it did not.
It did not. It was the littlest little dink, and like on the.
I was concerned for that audio.
The audio level went.
It
Yeah, it quaked in fear. I'm gonna back us down.
us down a little bit.
Just a hair.
Back from the edge there.
We were coming in hot there.
Sheesh.
Ooh, between our little tink and our laugh.
That was something.
Ooh.
I apologize, but only partially.
So at least a 7-0 on the seismograph there. Yeah, we're talking about Rings of Power. We're coming back to. This is the first time
This is the first time we've actually.
yeah.
Yes, this is the first time we've talked about it ever.
Yes, it is. It really is. Once we figured, well, yes, no, yep. It's totally the first time that we were ever talking about this, and you know, it's funny. We actually are coming back to our most viewed episode.
True.
On our channel.
Was the original anticipatory video years ago now.
Yes.
That's how long this has been.
Probably close to 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
It was our most viewed episode. We got 120 views on it.
That's how
super exciting
hot stuff.
Super exciting for an 17 or 18 subscriber.
Oh, we
channel.
were like 6 at the time though.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Yeah, we were.
Yes. So in terms of subscriber to viewership percentage there,
Oh,
we
like
might have been the
100%,
hottest
like-
people on YouTube at the time.
Yeah, like 1,000% increase or something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
easily.
Yeah. No one was better than us at that moment. So
Mm-hmm.
proud moment for us. But yeah, we're gonna talk about it because we just watched the season 8.
Season 8.
The that would have been loud on there too. my forehead slap. We're watching the season 1.
Episode 8, the
Episode 8,
finale.
the finale of season 1.
We have
for
watched
Rings
the
of Power.
entire series now.
Which is crazy because, like, back when we first talked about this, which is when it was first announced, I didn't, like, it was still years away, and it was crazy to think, like,
It's finally here.
it's
happened.
finally here, it's happened, it's over. The first season is over.
I can say it's really just beginning, to be fair.
It really is just beginning, yeah. But it's crazy to now see where we are versus where we were then.
Mm-hmm.
It's been our own personal little journey too, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. I can't believe it's come and gone rather quickly.
Yeah, those 8 episodes went quick.
Yeah,
They really did.
Well, you did have the 2-episode premiere that came out because the show was delayed quite a bit because of COVID. That was one thing that actually happened. They were filming in New Zealand, and then COVID happened, and everybody was like, well,
New Zealand said nothing happened.
yes. Keep Hobbiton clean. No, thank God that's not in the series. But yeah, it came and gone, and I think it has something to do. Have you noticed that shows do like multi-episode premieres now? And I kind of getting sick of it because it's gonna get to like Andor. I haven't watched it. Andor did like 3-episode premiere.
Yeah. People want that initial burst of doing something.
I
and
guess
then
they
going
do,
to
but it's like
serialized.
somebody's gonna do a 6-episode series and they're gonna do a 5-episode premiere, and so you know what I'm saying? Like it's like getting a little ridiculous.
Right, you don't have
They're
enough
like,
time to actually space the show out. If you
I
do all
know
of the-
it's like the first 4 episodes are up. How many are there? There's 7.
They want the benefit
Okay.
of when Netflix dropped whole shows at once. They want the benefit of binging with the benefits of serializing that keep people in. It's an interesting middle ground. I'm curious.
It is. But
The show itself,
yes,
it's interesting. I feel like I'll go
in.
first because I feel like I'm gonna have the shorter take. Just realistically,
what's that supposed to mean, and why is that true?
I don't know. But I feel 2 ways.
Are you doing initial impressions first, like overall what you think of it, or are you gonna dig into your stuff?
I'll do a quick one. I'll do a quickie.
Just initial,
we'll
like,
both do
what I
quickies. We'll both do quickies, and then we can do whatever afterwards.
Pebbles.
I really enjoyed watching the show, like the physical act of watching the show. I think it's high production quality overall. They did a really good job. All of the actors were amazing, in my opinion. I really can't think of anybody that was subpar or felt like they did not belong with the rest of the cast. And all of, like, obviously Elrond and Durin are total standouts. Absolute top tier. I think everybody killed it in their roles. I think that the cinematography, again, fantastic. A couple of very brief moments in the show that the CGI was less than stellar, but nothing that really stood out in like a, oh my gosh, what am I watching kind of way. Just they didn't quite make the budget on that one, but it's past now and we're moving forward.
Mainly non-human things.
Mainly the warg, honestly. Like the
wargs and the wolves were.
Yeah, those are really the only things that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
But even then, those shots were brief and
Very fleeting.
yeah, I actually think they did a great job with most of the CGI they did have, and they did a good job of avoiding CGI in a lot of circumstances as well. But the actual plot, I go 2 ways. Way one, it was well executed in a lot of ways. I think there are exceptions to that we can get into later. But it was overall well thought out and planned.
Yeah.
The way 2 is before we saw the series finale, and this is going to be getting into the actual meat of the episodes, just what's happening. We're going to be talking about it. I did not want, number 1, I felt like Halbrand being Sauron was that's what I give the warning. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Like, I will be getting into the actual whatevers.
Okay.
I didn't want that. I kind of, and again, this is a subjective thing. But I wanted Sauron. I didn't think it would fit for him to be that. And I think the amount of time they had to dedicate to his little internal monologue with Galadriel kind of is an indicator of how they had to kind of make you get there, even though they obviously were already leading in, but of like kind of reshaping who he is. And they had the clues. Like I want to give it to them that they gave the clues throughout, and it was definitely not completely unseen because I was thinking about it beforehand. But I don't know, something in me didn't really want that. But they stuck landing well enough, I guess. And the other thing, very similarly, is they were obviously cueing the stranger to be a wizard, and that wizard is, if it's not Gandalf, they really want you to think it is. And I did not want that. I would be okay if he's like some other wizard, but they're cueing it too much. As even though I haven't said the name, they gave the line that's a reference to Gandalf. He's learning a love for Hardfoots. Not hobbits. Hobbits don't exist. They're Hardfoots. But they're cueing it so much to be Gandalf, and that I just, it feels a little like, now come along, we have to have some Lord of the Rings things for you to appreciate this show. So come along, little Timmy. We gotta, and
I'll get into it too.
But that's my quick take, is that I love the love they put into the show. I think shows. That's a lot of repeating words. Yeah. But I think the love they put into it really shows the quality. I am, even despite myself on the stuff I'm not as interested in how things go and continue to go. And I'm ready I want season 2. I want all of that. But I'm also like, on some of the decisions they made. And I'm sure that's where you'll even expound more as somebody that actually knows how much they're kind of pushing and pulling with actual canon that you care a little bit more about.
Yeah. So I agree with you a lot on that. And I don't think necessarily there's anything that I disagree with you on. Mm-hmm. From a production standpoint, it's very well done. If there's a wolf and a warg on screen, it's about 10 or 15 seconds of really bad CGI. And it's over.
I've seen worse though. Marvel's doing a lot worse, I'll tell you.
Marvel is doing a lot worse, but for a show that probably had a budget of 250 to 500 million for a season, should have been much better. But I'm not going to expound on that. I'm not going to go into that at all. I don't really care about that. From a production standpoint, really, really good. It's clear that they did a lot of, and you can kind of tell, it's a lot of practical effects in this show.
Yes, and they really did want to take those cues from Jackson's original work.
Jackson was heavy in practical effects. He still used CGI and he used it very, very well.
And I think it's paid off that they did take that as well.
And so you can tell, like, for them to do practical effects, the showrunners do have a love for Tolkien stuff, and clearly everybody who was involved with this really had a passion for the project, which is nice when the people who work on things actually enjoy working on them. I think everybody loved going to work at the beginning of the day and doing this stuff and then going home, and you really tell it from the actors too. Even though there are some characters in the show who are not, I don't want to say not written very well, but they're just kind of like, they seem kind of irrelevant. I'm talking about the entirety of the Harfoot storyline, and I'll get more into that. Everybody did a really, really great job. I can sit here and praise Elrond and Durin and Disa, those three. Anytime those three are on screen, is my favorite parts of the entire show. Disa was one of the characters, funny enough, I was most concerned about.
Gosh, she killed it.
She was amazing. Literally one of the best. And the thing is, I was not concerned about it from any angle other than we've never really seen a dwarven queen.
Yeah, that's
true. We've never really
seen just a female dwarf in general that we know of.
But she was perfect. Owain Arthur. I've quite forgotten the name of Disa's actress. I'm so sorry. Owain Arthur as Durin was fantastic. Robert Aramayo as Elrond was perfect. Their friendship together is one of the best things I've seen in any Tolkien related things ever. Like, it was fantastic.
Heck, any show in general. That's a top tier friendship.
It absolutely is.
It's up there.
So everybody did a really great job. I loved Morpeth Clark as Galadriel. I just nobody was bad.
Yeah,
nobody was bad. It's more of a behind the scenes things that I have a problem with, and I guess that's where I'm going to get into this now, dig into the deeper bits. So there's so much that's revealed, and this might heavily focus on the last episode.
A lot of it does come down to the last episode. It really solidified a lot of what was happening.
I kind of joked earlier. I think it was before even Clap synced, it was right after we did. It was 90% of the bad stuff in the show comes at the last 10% of the show. Like, I'm kind of more or less joking when I say that, but there are a lot of things that in this episode they reveal so much in so little time, and really, I wish they would have premiered 7 and 8 together like they did 1 and 2. Because I feel like it would not have been so shocking, right? For 8 for this episode, the season finale, to do what it did. And it did feel like it tried to reveal so much. The first thing I do want to get into is the story with the stranger. Okay, so it's kind of revealed that the stranger, they do heavily lean into that this is Gandalf. And that's a big problem that I have, because Gandalf does not show up until about 1,000 years into the Third Age, and that is Tolkien writing. They have rights to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and the appendices in The Lord of the Rings as well.
Yes.
I do not know for sure if that's mentioned in there, but it is mentioned somewhere in Tolkien's writings that he came about 1,000 years into the Third Age.
And honestly, even if it's not mentioned, just because that's not something you need the rights to honor.
No.
You like it's one of those where, not having Gandalf in the show because he's not showing up until the Third Age. You don't have to have the rights to the Silmarillion to know to not have him in the show until it would be correct.
He's technically not even. Well, the thing is, he arrives. The way the canon actually goes, Legendarium goes, is he arrives in Middle Earth. He's greeted by Círdan.
That guy.
Yes, that guy. He was actually greeted by Glorfindel, but he is
Glorf.
He's greeted by Glorfindel, actually, who is an elf from the Silmarillion.
Rivendel's goofy cousin.
Glorfin yeah. He's greeted by Glorfindel, an elf from the Silmarillion, and he is given one of the rings from Círdan, who we have not met yet. Hopefully we do get to meet him. He's the guy who builds all the ships that people sail into the west on. Yes, that's him. So at the end of The Lord of the Rings, when Galadriel and Bilbo and Gandalf and Frodo are all sailing west, Círdan built that ship. He's Círdan the shipwright. He's an elf. He's from way back.
Yeah.
He's been there a long time. Yep. So that's 1,000 years into the Third Age because they know Sauron has been destroyed, but they more so are guardians over the peoples of Middle Earth and watchers over the looming spirit of Sauron, who they know did not vanquish because of the survival of the ring.
Right.
They are kind of a fallback for the people of Middle Earth. That's the Istari, right? So they kind of revealed that the stranger is an Istar. And he says a line at the end of the show, "When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot, follow your nose." And I wanted to hit myself in the face when I heard that, because here's the thing. I understand that they're trying to appeal to people who maybe have not seen Lord of the Rings that much, or maybe you've not read the books, but these guys clearly loved the Tolkien's writings. They've read the books, probably know more about it than I do. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense why you would go there. In fact, dare I say it, if you cut the entire... No, I'm correct when I say this. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm freaking correct. If you cut the entire Harfoot storyline out of the show, nothing changes.
Nothing changes so far.
Nothing changes.
Yeah, and 100% they're building into future seasons, but this season is completely untouched if you remove the stranger, if you remove the Harfoots, and with that you remove Morgoth's sort of opposite goth servants that come in, because they peace out at the end of it.
It's a completely different storyline. And so that's what makes me think, in other episodes, you're watching all this stuff. You're watching all this stuff in Moria, and you're watching the things in... I loved the Numenor storyline with the Southlanders and with Galadriel and Halbrand, or, as we now know, Sauron. But I loved that storyline because that unfolded very well, and that set up some great things. It set up, Tar Palantir is now dead. That's going to set up Pharazôn trying to usurp the throne from Miriel since she's now blind. That sets up a lot of stuff that is, I think, going to be more canonically accurate as this show goes on.
And I will also say, before we get too far into it,
yes,
as unnecessary as I see the Harfoots and all that being, again, like we said earlier, well acted, well done. I loved the depiction of the Harfoots, even if there's arguments about whether or not they should have been there in the first place.
Yeah,
it was well done, and I would even say from a rhythmical standpoint of the episodes, having those moments of the genuine nature of a Harfoot in, or a Hobbit as we would think of them in Lord of the Rings, interspersed to bring in that sort of counter emotional play for your own, like, as you go through an episode. I can see those arguments for including it that aren't necessarily canon or that kind of argument, but an argument from a sense of flow. And I would support that mainly with the fact that they had them, but I did appreciate they were not so reliant on having them that things like episode 6, where the entire Mount Doom thing happened, was literally just like the entire episode did not have anything but the Southland. Yeah. And they were willing to do that, and I think that's a very good sign moving forward for things that might be less than necessary.
And they had episode 4, which focused, very heavily on Durin and Elrond.
Exactly. And they never had a Harfoot episode either.
Yeah,
so I do appreciate that.
They do a good job of switching back and forth, but
to go back to what you're actually talking about, I just wanted to make that note of, like, I appreciate from a viewing standpoint some of the things they did, but it definitely did feel unnecessary.
It feels like it feels like a waste. Like I don't. Now, some may disagree, and what I want to expand on what I mean by waste. You have a storyline that has been running for 8 episodes, even if 2 episodes were not. Nothing even happened in that storyline in 2 episodes. You've got an 8-episode season right now where everything you figured out everything you had questions about in about 10 minutes of screen time. Between the events of learning that this guy he's all of a sudden speaking well, he's clearly got his memory back, like
the whole Morgoth servant thing kind of cleared his memory.
Everything in the season resolves with the Harfoot story in about 10 minutes.
I was trying to think about what it was about the last episode that made me feel a little weird, and it is mainly that they didn't, and I think it's what you're getting into, like the 7-8 feeling like it should have been a dual premiere.
Yeah.
Is that they could have spread out those resolutions over 2 episodes instead of making it all happen at the very end. They had the time to play with if they had cut some stuff.
And it's just like, okay, so I'm glad we got some kind of resolution. We got some answers, because I was going to be a lot more livid about this if there was no resolution.
For sure.
So that would have made me really, really mad. But it's weird. Now I was gonna get into something else, but I want to stay where I'm at. So again, what you're saying acted well. Like, I got no problem with anybody. It's just like the storyline amounted to like one thing, and it was like we learned that he's an Istari, and he says a line that Gandalf says in Lord of the Rings. So it's like clearly they're playing off of Jackson. In fact, they're playing more off of Jackson's trilogy than they are the actual Lord of the Rings canon. Mm-hmm. Which they're doing a lot of callbacks to Jackson. And that's another callback to Jackson.
Yes.
So they're not calling back to Tolkien lore as much. And that's getting them in trouble. Because one, now, for the next 2 years, which we're probably not going to see anything until about 2024. Sorry. They just started filming for season 2 this month.
They got green. I think all the seasons got greenlit now, but they didn't start filming until recently.
So it's going to be probably another 2 years before we see anything of season 2. Maybe we'll see a trailer late 2023, and then maybe we'll see something spring 2024.
I will say, though, my favorite part of all the whole stranger stuff was when Nori looked at the stranger and she said, "You're a wizard, Gandalf." That was a really good callback. I appreciated that.
Yeah. Rip.
I was gonna say rest in peace, by the way, to Hagrid. That was I didn't even think about that. That was good actor.
Very good actor. His
role.
name's eluding me right now,
It is. That's why I called him Hagrid.
Making me really, really upset. Oh no. Look his name up while I'm talking. But yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
It's fine.
That's good. Didn't even spike the audio. But my question is, why would you do it the way they did it? Why would you put that line in there? If you're just putting that, if he's not Gandalf, then if he doesn't end up being Gandalf, first of all, his name's not even Gandalf at this point. His name is Olorin. That was his name in Valinor, where he came from. Right. He's a Maiar, the same race as the Balrogs, the same race as Sauron. Actually, they're Maiar. That's who they are. They're a lesser being.
By the way, Robbie Coltrane.
I was on the tip of my tongue. Yes, rest in peace, Robbie Coltrane. We love you, just like everybody does. But his real name is Olorin. He's a Maiar, and that still has not been revealed. He's not even known as Gandalf until thousands of years later, right? So he wouldn't even be able to say, my name is Gandalf right now, because his name is not Gandalf. His name is Olorin, if that is his name. Now, there were two other wizards, named Alatar and Palando, that were also, so it was 5 Istari sent to Middle-earth, right? And this was in the Third Age, but, whatever. What is the Legendarium at this point? Anyway, Alatar and Palando, they're blue wizards. Radagast, Saruman, Gandalf, right? Now, this is definitely not Radagast or Saruman, and I don't think it's Gandalf. I don't want it to be Gandalf. I'm hoping it's not. But again, the always follow your nose line points to Gandalf.
Weird, and that's the weird thing to me.
If he's not Gandalf later, then what the frick was the point of that
right.
line, right?
That's the weird thing to me, is that I feel like he's not Gandalf in a lot. Like, they could make him not Gandalf if they weren't so intent on making him look like Gandalf.
That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, he's got long gray hair. He's got a long gray beard. He wears a gray cloak. If he had the pointy hat, the
cloak is a little green, but like outside of that, no, it's very.
But it's like, if he doesn't end up being Gandalf, then that line was stupid and pointless, and that's just going to make everything worse in the end. Now, he could be Alatar and Palando, because the blue wizards didn't end up. Now, they did this together again, but they ended up going east, actually.
Oh, interesting. Which would be kind of what.
So maybe someone correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am, but they ended up going east, and they actually had cult-like people. They actually had cults that followed and worshipped them.
Interesting.
In the east. Now they're heading to Rune. So, and it's cool that they bring up Rune, because it is a land east of Middle-earth, kind of in the northeast corridor of Middle-earth, above Mordor. So maybe they're setting up something like that, which again, how is that connect to everything else to do with the Rings of Power and what this show is actually about? I'm sorry, the Harfoots and the wizards don't really have a lot to do with the Rings of Power until you get to about Gandalf. And if this isn't Gandalf, again, the line is pointless, and this whole storyline is pretty pointless, other than just to break up the other storylines.
Right.
And that's just kind of like my problem, is like, they want to make this familiar for people who don't know Lord of the Rings that well. They go, oh, remember, hey, there's more short people who don't wear shoes, and they're kind of dirty. There's a tall man with a beard. Oh, he says that line that he says in that show,
right.
in that part in that movie, in that part in the section before the big wing thing comes out and drags him down the castle. They're trying to connect the pieces here, and it's kind of pointless, because no one's going to know the backstory of that stuff anyway, and the people who already know it are going to be pissed off like me.
I was going to say, the big thing to me is, like, if you're going to throw a line like that in there that is referential, you're not doing it for the casual people, because they aren't going to get the reference.
They don't know it.
And if you're going to do it for the diehards, they're going to know that shouldn't be a reference. So it's just like it's a weird thing to do.
Yeah, for me, the entire Harfoot Stranger storyline is kind of fail right now. It's kind of the weakest point of the show. And again, it's not that they did anything. They haven't done anything bad except like really, really screw with the Legendarium. Because again, like, these guys, these showrunners say that they love Tolkien. They know as much as they know.
And I believe it too.
Why is it? I do believe it as well, because it shows in other parts of the show. If you do, and this is really Gandalf and you're setting this up, I don't see how you can say that you're a big fan of Tolkien stuff when you are literally changing bits and pieces. And that's not the only time they did this in this show. Right. So, in fact, in this episode, because this is the next thing that we're going to get into, is how Halbrand has now, we've confirmed him. He's been confirmed as Sauron. So,
yes.
So before we get into that, though, that's at least my thoughts on the Harfoot and Stranger storyline. For me, overall, it's disappointing because there's still no direction for it to go. There's just hints at things, but it's taken 8 episodes for a 10-minute reveal that could have been done in another episode. And it's kind of like, for me, that is a loss on this part of the show. It is, I'm not going to hold back. It's kind of pointless, and it still feels, it's not, compared to the rest of the show, it's kind of, to me, it's just pointless.
And
what the heck is the point?
I think that's a good segue, is compared to the rest of the show.
Yes.
The show has a lot of things that I would even argue, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it's, again, I feel like it's kind of a subjective thing. I feel like they have a reason to make Halbrand Sauron or whatever.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not the biggest fan of it, that still felt very impactful of, like, this is the storyline of the show. This is a clear through line that they've been making, and is a thread that is intentional and part of the story.
If the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Return of the King, or Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King, Silmarillion, and Hobbit did not exist before this show, this would be the best show ever made. I'm going to say it right now. But there's books and there's writings that are anywhere from 50 to 70 to almost 80 years older than this show. And I hope my mic picked that up, because my mic was way down there. That was my bad. Sorry. I'm really relaxed right now. But it's like there's so much that happened before this show that, again, it's like,
for me, the big thing is
they're not taking it in stride.
Right.
Correctly.
It's one of those where, like,
sense.
My biggest issues with the whole Harfoot stuff you've already covered.
Yeah.
I think that the rest of the show feels much more intentional.
Yes.
All the decisions
Agreed.
made, even the ones that I'm not as big a fan of. And I'm interested to see, now that season 1 is done, in a couple years when we get future seasons, they now have to prove to us why they sort of gave us all that burner time. You know what I mean? Like, what is this journey going to be leading to? What is that going to be tying into like, how is that going to somehow tie into what's happening?
And I think they will do that.
And I think they will.
As you said, like, there's clearly a lot of intentionality here, and I think that's very recognizable. So I don't think they're going to leave any loose ends.
No,
they're
for
not
sure.
going to. And look, even if it was 8 episodes of stuff resolved in about 10 minutes when it comes to the Harfoot and Strangers, I know there's going to be, like, more with that, and I know they're going to be intentional about making sure that there's no loose ends, that this somehow ties into the stories that we know. So,
and they did a good job.
Yeah.
As fast as it was, they did do a good job of resolving things. I'll give that up as well. And I also, the big thing for me, the main plot lines we had was the Southlands, which tied into the Númenóreans, which tied into Galadriel. All 3 of those combined together to make the finale of that plot line. We see Adar has created Mordor. We see Sauron is now going to Mordor to theoretically take over his throne, essentially, that Adar has unwittingly created for him. And I am interested. That is one thing I am interested in, because I do think Halbrand's actor, again, has shown himself to be a very good actor, and Adar's actor has shown himself to be a fantastic actor as well. I very much look forward to their interactions as characters. That's going to be very good.
I think it is going to be very good.
And I also, but all that to say as well is that we've seen that storyline resolve and where it's going. We've seen the 3 rings for the elves forged. But we've also had the best things that they've teased coming to the future seasons. Elrond and Galadriel's relationship is going to be very interesting going forward. I'm curious how, Elrond and Durin, when we're going to get more of that, how much that'll play and all that. I hope, please.
Because they woke up a Balrog.
Right, they woke up the Balrog, so they're teasing that's happening.
Several thousand years too early.
Obviously, Durin's Bane.
Yep.
But then...
Okay. Yeah.
We're also getting, I'm not saying it's canonically, whatever, but...
You reminded me of something else I'm not happy with. Anyway, keep going, please.
But, Elrond and Galadriel get to have a friendship again.
Yes.
And I expect that to be killer, because Elrond already showed he's amazing at it. Galadriel, I've seen some people, and I can agree that, like, she doesn't act maybe as regal as she should, but I also think we're already seeing in this first season's conclusion, I think we're already seeing that shift happen. She's learned, I think this specific plot point of the reveal and all of that is changing a lot of how she's starting to act and how she's starting to bring measure and pace to how she's thinking and all of that.
Yeah, and I think I am going to expand on the Galadriel part 2 in defense of how she was, because I was actually very critical of that too. Mm-hmm. And first of all, her name means man maiden. Okay. So she is described. She's big. She's tough. She's built. She will beat the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. And she was very, very. She's also. Feanor was also her uncle, who was probably just one of the worst people to ever exist. Right. He created the Silmarils, and he basically had his cousins killed because they didn't lend him ships.
Right.
And then he burned the ships when he got to the other side. Like, he's a really bad dude. Terrible person, right? Celebrimbor is also his grandson. So, yeah, fun fact. Yeah. So
Galadriel's Celebrimbor's
niece.
Aunt? Niece?
Okay, yes. Okay. Her dad is King Finarfin.
Okay. I'm not going to pretend like that helps me.
I guess it's technically step-uncle?
Okay. It's elvish relationships. Anyways.
Yes. So, basically, she, in her youth, was very hot-tempered, very headstrong. She's not going to be the regal Kate Blanchett that we get in Third Age, which is several thousand years later. She's going to learn a lot over the... Elves have serial longevity. Mm-hmm. You can kill them, but they will not die otherwise.
Yep.
Right? So she's going to learn a lot over the next 1,000 years. But
and honestly, that was always my take as well. I've just heard people kind of...
She's still kind of young, right? So
she's one of the older elves. The elves don't have to... She has the time to change.
We're going to see her change into that more regal over the seasons, because she has not established Lothlorien yet. She still has to establish that. Like, Imladris isn't even a thing yet. Rivendell, that doesn't exist. Like, there's so much that we see in the Jackson trilogy that does not exist yet.
Rightfully so.
Right? Yeah. So we still have to see all that. And one of those things is the development of Galadriel from this hot-tempered elf who just wants to kill orcs into this very regal... We look to her as basically a queen on Earth, right? She's one of the oldest elves at that time in the Jackson trilogy. Like, we're going to see her expand into that. And I do look forward to that, because I think Morpeth Clark has really done a good job. Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to their relationship, specifically Elrond and Galadriel's, because we've already seen that we have seen good dynamics between characters in this show.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they're going to really have some good stuff of tension, which is something Elrond and Durin have had tension, but in a very different way. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see the sort of tension that will come from a Galadriel and Elrond relationship.
Yeah.
But also, again, that underlying friendship and bond that Elrond holds so dear in his life.
And I'm glad it's not. I'm glad it's not romantic, because that would be super, super jacked up. Because Galadriel thinks that her husband is dead. He's very much not dead, because we see him. You remember the guy who goes, "Tell me, where is Gandalf?"
Yes.
For how much? That's him.
Oh,
his name's
nice.
That's Celeborn.
That is Celeborn.
He's very much alive.
Good for him.
So maybe we'll see him later on in the series. He did not look
like a silver clam at the time.
He did not.
Good for him. I'm glad that he made it. Good for him.
So but she thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
Right? And so
It'd be really awkward.
it's gonna be weird. I'm looking forward to that reunion, and obviously we're gonna obviously we will end up meeting Celeborn. We will end up meeting Círdan at some point.
Yeah. I'm excited, and that's something I'm excited for these new characters as well.
Yeah.
That they haven't even necessarily introduced in the show yet, but though they've again vaguely referenced her husband now, but I'm excited to see as we get. That's something they've done, even with the characters I didn't think plot wise were whatever. I thought every character they put on screen was I enjoyed watching them at some point because they did a good job in their role. So I'm excited to see that for a new season.
Yeah. What do you think of? And I totally agree. I do. Good job to everybody who worked on this. Good for you. You did something that was very, very hard. So good on you.
Oh my gosh.
And, as much as I've criticized them, good job on the showrunners, too. Your job is not easy, so well done. You've done the best with what you can. I would tweak a few things if I could, but good on you. Good job. You obviously were chosen for the job for a reason. So I want to know what you thought of Halbrand as Sauron, because Halbrand is not the name we know Sauron by.
No, and
who made the rings.
And I do think that the main thing I have with that is they were making a show and they came across the trouble of the fact that canonically Sauron did work with the elves to make some rings.
Yes.
And I think they were like,
so
how are we going to get Sauron to work with elves to make rings? Well, and how are we going to get the elves to do that more specifically?
So that part is actually canonically true. Sauron did teach Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor is the greatest elven smith to ever live, other than his grandfather Fëanor.
Yes.
Right. So Sauron did teach the elves how to make the rings. He did. So that part actually did not mind.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Is
making the little suggestions like, you could just divert the herds of this and do that. And he's like, duh, let's do that. And they made the rings. But like, he has a specific name. He's under the alias of an elf called Anatar.
Oh, so we actually do know how he did that teaching.
He influences. He's this great elven smith, this maker of gifts. He shows Celebrimbor, who, unlike his grandfather, Celebrimbor, he unknowingly creates the doom of Middle Earth,
right?
Not making the One Ring. Sauron makes the One Ring, which we haven't seen made yet. We will, but Celebrimbor makes the rings that then enslave everybody. Like the elves felt the effects of Sauron's One Ring when it was created on the rings they had made. So, but his name was Anatar.
Right. I did not realize that part. That's what I was thinking was like, oh, maybe the canon was not clear enough as to how you would go about that alias, but no, they definitely just changed the everything.
Did. And that's another thing. It's like, I don't know if they again had the rights to say that, but that kind of plays into like,
I was gonna say, I could definitely see that being something in the Silmarillion, and they wanted to do a plot with that, but they weren't allowed to use Anatar and all of that, so they made their own plot.
And also, like, Sauron has a huge influence. Sauron ends up greatly, and maybe we'll see this later, because the only person who technically knows that Halbrand is Sauron right now is Galadriel
and Elrond. Theoretically.
Elrond has a hunch.
He doesn't know, but he's seen
Galadriel learns
he knows that Halbrand was not the king of the South.
Galadriel learns the single biggest secret in Middle Earth right now, and she tells nobody exactly what happens. She's not like, oh my god, Halbrand's Sauron, we gotta track him down, he's on horseback, let's go. He's headed to Mordor, he's gonna head there, let's go. Right? She doesn't do anything. They just go back to creating the rings like nothing. Just like she did not just get baptized with bad dreams. And
yeah, the whole situation there, I don't, she didn't do it out of a desire to let Sauron go.
Yeah.
She did it because I think she believed him when he said that she wouldn't gain anything by telling. I think she 100% thinks that if she goes and starts crying wolf, they're just going to kick her out entirely, and she's gonna be useless and not gonna be crazy. Yeah, right. They're gonna think she's, and like Elrond, maybe not, but but I think that she just recognizes the situation she's in.
Yeah.
And I think there's arguments you can make about that either way, as a decision.
Yeah.
But again, that's something that it's a moment that you could argue maybe should have gone down differently, but it's something I'll leave more to season 2 as to what she actually does, because we've only seen this brief moment of her reaction.
Yeah.
Season 2 will actually see the time of what she actually does about
because
it.
Gil-galad has left by the time they create the rings. He's gone back to Lindon, right? They're in Eregion is where the rings are made, which is Celebrimbor's, that's his town. Eregion. Eventually overrun by Sauron, and
classic.
I can't wait for everybody to. I hope they do it. I can't wait to everybody see the fate of Celebrimbor, because it is.
I don't know that. So.
It is heinous. I'll tell you in a little bit.
Fun.
So it's rough. Yeah. It's rough. My boy. It's not good.
Amazing.
So I hope they show that, because it's one of those like Sauron moments that makes you shiver, right?
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, it's interesting that they went this route again. I thought they did a pretty good job of it. I mean, like it's kind of Halbrand puts in these little thoughts like, oh, what if we're just forcing it to bond? We're trying to force it to bond. Maybe it just needs to kind of naturally bond with this material instead of us using brute force. Well, it ends up working, and he ends up influencing Celebrimbor.
Yes.
To then be able to make these rings. Now it's Galadriel's idea to make 3. But yes. Celebrimbor, which is okay, whatever. Halbrand is the one who really kind of puts those little inklings.
He's the one that made it possible.
He is.
In her, I think with Galadriel, she also kind of saw that if they did somehow believe her, there would also be a possibility of the rings not getting made. And there's a catch-22 of this whole sickness plot line that they've created.
Yep.
That they need the rings to survive.
Yeah, which is totally false.
Which is, I know, yeah. And I'm curious if in season 2 they will show a means in which it's actually false. If it's shown as a false thing, or if it will just be like, oh no, he did something that made them sick, and that is an actual plot line.
Yeah, because Mithril is not the livelihood of the elves.
No.
They don't need Mithril to survive. They are fine.
They are fine.
They don't need the whole storyline of like, this tree is sick and we're gonna die by spring if we don't have Mithril is the biggest load of hooey in this show. I'm not saying like
I'm just
that's the part of the show. I will take more of the Stranger and the Harfoots and more uselessness than I will take of that right there, because that is completely false.
And that's where I'm very curious if it's actually going to be hooey or not.
I see, and I don't know. What I thought at first was that Gil-galad and Celebrimbor were telling him this because they wanted to get more.
Oh, they were lying.
They were lying to get more Mithril from the dwarves, and they were using Elrond in that way. I thought that's what it was, but it kind of flipped, and it's like, oh, okay.
No, it's actually. It seems like it's pretty legit, and he's leaving, and the leaf did do the thing,
But it's like that doesn't make any sense. There's nothing in any writing that states like, oh, the elves they take their daily their one a day Mithril pill and they're fine, and when they run out they have to go to the dwarves and get another prescription of one a day Mithril filled so that they can take it with water and a meal and be good for the rest of the day, for us a couple hundred years more. It is such, that's a load of crap. So the fact that they did in that episode, like, I was just really confused. Why is it okay that there's a Balrog and an elf and a tree is struck by lightning, and there's a Silmaril in that tree, and the veins of the tree with the roots created from the Silmaril, the Mithril, and now that's a thing, and we need it to survive. No, they do not. Sorry, they don't. Anyway, back to Halbrand and Sauron.
Yes. No, it's
we just leaned back at the same time.
Yeah, amazing.
We're
saints.
We both just went like this. And I watched it in the mirror, and it was pretty cool.
Amazing. But no, I do think that overall, I've kind of wrapped up, and I think we're kind of hitting most of the points now of just like, I think that it's one of those where I don't necessarily agree with a lot of decisions made. And I think if you're going to count the season as like kind of a beginning and end, which you do have to do with seasons, 100%, that's right.
Absolutely.
I think that there are things I don't like about that. They could have done better, all of that. But now that it's done, my full satisfaction or lack of will come through future seasons. They've got They just have to prove that it was worth it now.
It's not enough, and that's what one of my things, like, I've stated from the beginning, like, I may think, and I don't, I think there's some very good things about the show, because like I want to see more of Elendil, Isildur. He is still alive. Even though we
Yeah,
haven't
no,
seen him.
that was something I was surprised they didn't even like
So-
tease that he's alive. So I'm
Yeah,
curious how that's.
They
gonna...
didn't even tease. I'm guessing because they let his horse go in episode 7, right? Barrack.
Yes, because that's
It's
the whole
gonna
thing.
be. It's gonna be a when Aragorn's horse comes and finds Aragorn by
Right,
the river in Two
right.
Towers. It's gonna be a thing of. I'm pretty sure Barrack is gonna find Isildur
For
is still
sure.
alive, right? Because they're still there, and he can't.
Which
he
that does
can't be
okay.
dead.
Really quickly, I did
Yeah.
want to shout out specifically. We're talking about all the actors and stuff. What's his dad's name?
Elendil.
Elendil. Absolute standout moments for him. Fantastic job portraying a father that's lost his
Yes.
son, portraying a commander trying to hold it all, like the new renewed like vow of what's going to happen. I just wanted to shout out really quick, like Elendil, he for me was one of the just absolute shining moments of that last episode.
Yeah.
Killed when he's waiting, looking for Isildur, and then when he gets the news, like every single part of that, so much props to him.
He is portraying. Elendil is one of the most significant men to ever live in Tolkien's writings. He founds Gondor and Arnor, and obviously, like the sword that Aragorn carries is the shards of the sword of Elendil, who fought Sauron with Gil-galad one-on-one. Doesn't end well for either of those two individuals, right? Sorry, spoilers.
Even Lord of the Rings shows that one.
But yes, but they. It's even a little bit different in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
They actually, him and Gil-galad go one-on-one with Sauron.
Oh, that's fun.
Nobody survives that.
Oh, that's
fun. So like that's like stuff I'm excited to see. But Elendil is one of the people. It's like he's perfectly portraying. Like Elendil was just like his name also means elf friend.
Yeah,
right?
which is the whole thing they have in the dynamic.
And he's one of those faithful of the Númenóreans who there's not a lot left, and there's a reason he survives the events that we kind of saw a sneak peek of in Miriel's dream, right? But he is one of the ones, like, he's perfectly portraying who Elendil was just this unshakable man that you would, like, you look at him, and I don't care if you're man, woman, or child, you look at the guy, you listen to him, and you're like,
right.
I will fight beside this guy until I die.
Right.
Like, I will put my life on the line for this dude. I will follow him wherever I go, because that's a king. He's a king in the making. And I love his character. I think they did a really good job with that.
But yeah, I didn't want to.
No, you're fine.
I just had to shout that out really quick before we kind of get to the wrap up.
I'm glad you
here.
expanded on that, because he was one of the. He's always very stoic, but at the same time, like every word he speaks has meat. There is not a pointless syllable that he has muttered in the entire show. It's and it's not like very ethereal either. It's not like very coded. It's
he
not like,
feels of all the characters in the show, he feels almost the most human.
Yes,
of the race of men, I feel like he most embodies the ideals of men.
And he does, and that's his. Yeah. That's that. He is one of those men in Tolkien's writings who embodies, like, this is what it is meant to be a man. And it's not like man like you or
right,
me.
the
like,
race of men.
It's the race of men. Like there's a reason that Elendil is who he is later in Tolkien's works. So it's like he's done such a good job with that. And the same goes with characters like Elrond and Durin. Like Elrond, we see who Hugo Weaving is later.
Right, the best of the elves, the best of the dwarves.
Yes.
And even then, and again, quick little shout outs of the taint of power, like how power taints people.
Yeah.
Already seeing that with dwarves and with Disa's final dialogue with Durin about you will, like, forget your old man. He's gonna die one day. You're gonna be king. We're gonna rule all of the dwarves. Mithril is gonna be everything for us, and it will happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's that power speech where it's like, you can see the seeds of selfishness and of jealousy and of all that are kind of coming into fruition.
And that's only going to be amplified when they're given magical rings.
And so it's like,
so
it's exciting to see those things I think well portrayed with how they talked about power and also even you argue about Halbrand, Sauron, whatever. Galadriel catching on to the way Celebrimbor talked about power.
Yeah.
And like that's
Power
not
over
right.
flesh.
Right. It's like that's
well.
not the what are you talking
Whoa.
about? Like, hey buddy, what's
Hey, where'd you hear that? Whoa. Should we? And then she finds out that Halbrand and Sauron, she's like,
right.
No, we're gonna make one more. And he's like, well, why didn't you just tell me?
Right. No more, whatever. So yeah. Again, final shout outs for me of like I appreciate how they've done a lot of the theming of the show. The themes have been really strong, and I'm excited to see what they do next. I don't agree with everything they have done, but they've convinced me enough that I am very willing to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I think, again, we're going to see this kind of tie into the Legendarium more as we go on. I think, and I also didn't want, I've always stated from the beginning, like, no matter if I thought this show was a load of hooey, right, that I was still going to watch it. Because do not want to be one of those people where I'm like, this sucks, this is terrible, it goes against the Legendarium. Did you watch all of it? No, right? Like that's hypocritical and that's dishonest, right? Like if I'm going to criticize this thing, if I'm going to roast this show and some of the decisions that they're making, which I am and have been for the last 55 minutes, I want to make sure that I have seen everything that they've done and considered everything that they've done. They may not have stuck to and this is, I guess, wrapping up my impressions of this show, right? They may have not stuck to the legend, to canon, where we might have just seen Gandalf, right? Which is way out of line. They've also screwed with the timeline a lot, and that's one of the could be one of the reasons why now we are in the Second Age. Gandalf doesn't show up until the Third Age. Okay, well, it's weird that we now have somebody who we think is Gandalf and who they are pushing that on us right now.
Even if he's not, that is not our fault for thinking he's Gandalf right now.
Maybe now Sauron is the deceiver. And he's a shapeshifter.
Yeah, so and that's something. And that's where I was like going to give them credit with Halbrand. It's like it's in his brand to do that.
Yeah.
So I'll give it up.
So it's like they've played this into now. Anatar is the real being who, again, Sauron's alias, being Sauron the Deceiver. His alias is that his alias is Anatar, who helps create the rings. Okay, he teaches Celebrimbor how to do this.
And the last bit I'll say here is that in season 2, they have the possibility of still doing that.
They do. That's what I was getting at. That maybe again, Sauron can shapeshift kind of into whatever he wants. He shape. Good Lord, I need to make sure I don't cuss here. Shape shifts into like werewolves and vampires and bats and stuff in the Silmarillion. Vampires? There's vampires in the Silmarillion.
I didn't know that.
There are. I don't think like blah, blah, blah,
too
like
on.
Yeah, like not like
I don't want to go too off track, but I just didn't know.
Not like Nosferatu or Hotel Transylvania, but like there are vampirical beings in the Silmarillion. So he is a shapeshifter. He is a deceiver. He could still play into Anatar, and he goes and visits the dwarves and teaches the dwarven smiths how to make these rings, such as Durin, which would be really unfortunate because I love him, but. He teaches the dwarven smiths how to do that, and then he teaches the smiths of men, which we still have not seen the Southlanders at the end of episode 8. The story of Arondir, Bronwyn, and Theo, which is a great storyline, and Arondir is probably one of my favorite characters in the show. That storyline is still open.
It's very
and
open.
I guarantee,
I'm really
just
curious
saying,
how that goes.
They're waiting to wonder, because the last time they see Halbrand,
he's a king.
Elrond goes, he needs elvish medicine. I need to take, and she takes him to a Region.
Yeah, Galadriel does. Yeah,
they're waiting on their king.
They're waiting on their king to come back. I'm very curious.
So I'm thinking that we're going to see him as Halbrand, the king of the Southlanders, even though they don't know that he's Sauron.
Yeah, the whole tension that'll come from that.
That's going to be explosive, because I'm going to say this: Theo likes the power that he felt, and are we seeing a future Nazgul here?
I mean, it'd be very.
You know what I'm saying? He deceives 9 men into 9 lords of men. Okay, Theo could be one of them. We don't know. I would be okay with, because we're not really given the identity of the lords of men.
No, we're not.
You know, we only know one, and he was an Easterling named Kamul. But anyway. We still have to see all that.
Yep.
So that storyline's not over. There's so much we have to see, and I think honestly we're not going to be able to give any final impressions on this until the end of season 5.
Yep.
Because it is just, they're clearly building up to something here, and I think canonically it's going to kind of restructure itself to be more correct as the show goes on, because they're now getting into. This kind of sets up all the stuff that Tolkien wrote the most about when it comes to the Second Age.
Yep.
So we could still see, I do hope we still see oh, this is an elven smith named Anatar. He wants to talk to you about something, right? Like,
I would like to talk to you about the Rings Initiative.
Right, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. But, you know, obviously they didn't do that with the elves, and it is instead Halbrand who teaches Celebrimbor and kind of instructs him in a peer-like way,
Yeah.
right? How to make the rings. But maybe, and it's not Anatar, and that does stray from the canon just like several other things, right? But maybe we will see Anatar still later on in this show, because there's another thing too. Sauron is the one who ends up, along with using Pharazôn as basically his puppet to deceive Numenor and lead to its downfall.
Yeah, Pharazôn's going to be a character.
Pharazôn is now set up to usurp the throne for Miriel now that she has come back blind and Tar Palantir has died.
Mm-hmm.
They're really setting that up. So is Halbrand going to establish that kingdom in the Southlands and then make his way to Numenor as Anatar,
right?
To deceive Numenor, and when I say deceive, I mean like get into things as suggesting human sacrifice during moments of worship to Morgoth.
That happens. Intense. That's intense.
Now that is in the Silmarillion. Okay. So I don't know if they can do that.
But things are going to get intense.
Things are going to get real bad. So some good things have happened. It only gets
only goes down.
It only gets worse. Like it gets real bad, and only a couple people come out of this to tell the tale.
Literally, just Elrond and Galadriel.
Elrond and Galadriel, and that's really
pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. A couple others, but like nobody else comes out okay. Yeah. So, and I think at the end of the show, and when this is all said and done, 5 years from now, close to. I guess 2027 when we're looking back at this, right? Or, well, no, shoot, it's going to take 2 years in between seasons. So probably 2030, realistically. But, like, when it's all said and done, like, this is going to be a very tragic show. So, but you know what? They've done some stuff that's kind of off-key with Tolkien's writings, but I can't say that they've done it in a bad way. Everything that they've done, they've executed well, even if it did stray from the Legendarium that we've pre-established. Now, I'm not a big fan of that stray. But I can't say that the way they did it was bad.
Right.
They did very well, and I don't know what rights and privileges they don't have the rights and privilege to use, right? Like I don't know what they can and cannot do. They've gotten permission to use a couple things because there's a couple things that they've said that have not been that weren't mentioned in The Hobbit and the appendices and The Lord of the Rings, but overall I think what they had to do, I couldn't imagine being in their shoes and trying to put this together. They've done a daggone good job. I think it always goes back to what you were saying, that there is some serious intentionality in this. And you can tell that there's a love for the Tolkien Legendarium in this. And it's good to see that kind of passion. Because before this, like, no one was talking about this stuff. Like, I already knew about this stuff years ago, right?
Right.
Because I had read up, and it's just something that I'm into. Like, I'm a huge Tolkien nerd. Like, I love this stuff. It's my favorite. Yeah, right. Could you not tell? But it's like, I'm excited that there's just LOTR content out there right now that a lot of people are talking about. Because, look, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? Somebody who has never seen Lord of the Rings before or read it ends up picking up the Silmarillion and the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings and the unfinished tales and the lost tales, like all the Tolkien writing, and they end up really finding out the wonderful world of Tolkien through classic novels that have been out for 70 something years. But it's like, if this show introduces somebody to that wonderful world that I've known to grow and love, by all means, like that's really, really cool.
I'm excited, and we're excited to see what happens next at the end of the day.
Do you have a rating out of 10?
Ooh, out of 10, I'd have to. I mean,
I'd say 7. I'm gonna give it a 7.
I'll even be a little higher than you. I'll give it like a. I'd even say 7.58. Yeah, I'll give it an 8. 100%. I'll give it an 8. Yeah. I really do think I've enjoyed it. So
I think our criticism both reflect 7 and 8. Actually,
yeah, I think I think 8 and like if I liked the last episode differently, I would even say 9.
Yeah, really.
I honestly do think it was really, really enjoyable for me.
Yeah. I think Thanks for watching. We'll see you in about 2 years when this actually comes
That'll literally
out
be
now.
our next step. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. At this point, yeah.
No, we got more plans. It'll be fun.
We do have more plans, more goofy stuff, and just
quicker stuff too.
Yeah, quicker stuff.
I'm excited about
Absolutely. And I'll probably see less of this long form stuff, unless whenever the Dune Part 2 comes out, we'll probably do something on that. But
for sure.
a lot of exciting stuff. It'll be on Amazon Prime for the next 2 years. Probably go back and watch it.
Not the podcast.
Oh no, not the podcast. No. Definitely not. This will be on YouTube, of course.
What? For real?
Wait, really?
But yeah, well.
But you're not uploading it to Vimeo?
No. Vimeo.
Yeah,
I forgot about
Vimeo and Dailymotion.
I forgot about Vimeo, dude.
Most people did. So,
poor Vimeo.
Poor Vimeo.
It has its place.
It does. Yeah.
But
yeah, past sermon live streams mainly for churches. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Oh wait, I'm gonna. This is the thing people do in videos.
Okay.
You ready? And then it goes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love slowing it down and reading their palms. Be like
reading the palms.
Oh yeah. He's lonely.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. I have a wife, and I love you.
Just kidding. But hey, my palm.
No, you're not. Your palm's here with me, sir.
Oh heck
yeah.
Yes. Oh,
friendship.
That's the real ending right there.
Hey, your hands are the size of a tall gray man from a show.
Oh, look at this.
Look at those big hands.
Look at
those big hands.
Piano fingers.
Always follow your hands. Bye.